What dark secret are you hiding from everyone? I had an irritable bowel syndrome attack once and had to violently shit in a church grounds behind someone's car. Used underwear to wipe too and left that there. Not proud. When I was young, around age 9 or 10, I was walking home with my dog from a house around the block when he cut the corner and walked diagonally through the yard of this super mean old lady who lived at the end of our street. She was in her yard at the time tending to these really fancy looking rose bushes she had growing in beds along the border with her neighbor. My dog was a very friendly golden retriever who didn't even really come near her and certainly didn't do anything threatening, but she sprayed the fuck out of him with some kind of insecticide or other chemical she was using on her roses. I ran back home with the dog and hosed him off. He coughed a bunch, but seemed otherwise fine. I didn't tell my parents because somehow I thought I was going to get into trouble for letting the dog walk in her yard. I'm glad I didn't tell them, though, because I decided that night to sneak downstairs, out the half-bath window, and down the street to her yard where I cut down every goddamn rose bush I could get my hands on. 2 years ago one of my best friends and I went halfsies on a fuck ton of Xanax. On June 8 we both took Xanax from the batch we split. I woke up, he didn't. No one knows I had anything to do with the drugs that killed him, and I don't know if I can ever bring myself to tell someone. Funny, light-hearted story from my childhood. My little brother was in the shower, I could hear him singing. I put a coat on backwards, and a stocking cap pulled over my face, and waited outside the bathroom door. He opened the door still singing, and dancing kinda, and I did the Frankenstein thing. Arms out, moaning, ugh. He screamed and fell backwards knocking the toilet completely over. Water went everywhere, the top of the toilet tank broke, shower curtain ripped down, and him laying on the floor in the middle of all this. I ran back down the hall, coat and hat off, and sauntered back casually. By then my mother and father and our sisters were there, and everyone is like, you know, what the hell. I've heard him tell this story as proof of the existence of ghosts. To this day, little feller is now a 52-year-old bank manager with 2 kids, he believes in ghosts. I don't feel a bit bad. My uncle owned an old Camaro that collected dust in his garage. When I was around 10 my family and I were in town visiting and I wrote the word fuck in the dust on the hood of the car. I used my thumb so that the letters were fatter than my normal index finger. A few hours later my aunt/uncle asked us who did it and I proved it wasn't me by showing how the person who did it had bigger fingers than me. Taking that shit to my grave. This blew up. I'm 33 now and the entire family definitely knows it was me. It's an inside joke now where someone tries to get me to admit to it and I never will. When I was around 9 years old I used my mom's credit card to sign up my shitty alcoholic stepfather for a porn website in hopes of starting a fight and her leaving him. For your information she did leave after another year or so. Current stepdad is a real keeper. One of my closest co-workers, who is an integral part to our very large corporation, killed a man in his late teens and threw the body in a lake. He only got off on a technicality. I work remotely so I don't build a lot of personal relationships with people I work with regularly. I googled his full name. It freaked me out at first. But I've kinda gotten over it. I wonder if anyone else knows. It happened 40+ years ago. He will retire soon and then I might ask another coworker about it. I just don't want to stir the pot. My son will never know how much I can't stand his idiot friend from next door. The kid is legitimately stupid, and so confident, which makes it worse. Since I got a lot of upvotes, let me elaborate. He's not a bad kid. He's not malicious or a troll or anything. He just has zero common sense or ability to do the simplest tasks. He constantly talks and when he does it's either about absolutely nothing or it's just a bunch of wrong info, and he never leaves me alone unless I'm a bit terse and short with him. My kid is a few years younger than him and has more sense. I feel like I can leave my kid alone in the house for 30 minutes if I absolutely had to. I felt like if I left this kid alone for just 10 minutes he'd break something due to pure idiocy. I make up lies about what I do on the weekend. Usually I don't do much and I'm very content with that. Others are always asking me what I'm doing and I never had anything to tell them. I make up lies to get out of phone calls, or plans. Saying I'm out of town or with friends. I love just being left alone. When I was a teenager, I worked at a novelty tourist shop near me. Being the idiot that I was, I stole a wad of cash from the store. It was $100 in ones. I told nobody, but they knew it was missing. Right about the same time, a coworker who was always trying to get me fired was telling someone she got about $100 in tips from her other job. They ended up firing her because they didn't trust that it wasn't her. Not super dark, but mine is also stealing from my employer. It was a seasonal job and they told people if you came back next season you'd get a raise. Next season I got a 50-cent per hour raise and mentioned it to a couple other people who had also returned, who it turned out didn't get a raise. They went and complained to the boss, who then took my raise back and gave them each 25-cent raises. I argued with the boss for a bit but eventually just decided I'd steal a few bucks per shift to make up the difference. When I was younger I lived with my grandmother. Not long after I turned 18 her health started to decline, that sort of decline that you know means she won't be around for much longer. Over the months I did my best to take care of her. Getting her to the hospital when she needed, and other things. We had someone coming every day to help her with things I couldn't. Well, what my family doesn't know is that the night she passed, I was in the living room watching TV. My dog was in bed with my grandma, and I started to hear him whimper and bark. I knew what was happening. I knew that if I acted I could potentially save her. I didn't want to watch her suffer anymore though, to watch her live with so much pain, and unable to do anything for herself anymore. So I made the choice to let her pass before making any calls. She lived 92 years, and the only regret I have is that she passed a month after I would have graduated if I hadn't been kicked out of school. She had been in good enough health at the time to go to my graduation. I still kick myself for how stupid I was back then. I didn't expect this much support. Thanks. I'm not too torn up about letting her pass, I knew it was for the best. She was such a great person, she didn't deserve to live in such a poor manner any longer than she already had. I don't regret what I did, I regret what I had done that got me kicked out of school, that I didn't try and make it to graduation for her. I think I've lived my life so far in a way that she'd be proud of. Not graduating before she passed is the only regret I really have in this life so far, and I'm 35 now. So I think I'm doing pretty good. In middle school I made a smoking pipe out of copper pipe just for fun. I know you should not smoke out of copper as the fumes are potentially toxic. My stepdad took it from me and started using it. He smoked with it for years. I hated him for physically abusing me so I never said anything. It's now 30 years later and he was diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's and likely only has a few years to live. I hope he rots in hell. I don't know if it had any effect, but I like to think the copper pipe played a role in his sickness as karma for being an asshole. I like to think the copper pipe played a role in his sickness. Scientists long ago found that people with Alzheimer's have unusually high levels of copper in the beta amyloid plaques that are a signature of the disease. It's entirely possible that it did. I don't know why, but I always keep thinking that one day I will cut all contact with everyone in my life, disappear from their lives and just keep for myself. I don't know why I think like this. I have some good friends. One of my friends did this in 2015. I still look for him wherever I am, dream that he just shows up. I worry. He's my friend, and I love him, but I'm so mad. We don't know if he's alive or dead, and it is heartbreaking. If you're reading this, I love you, but fuck you bro. When I was 10, I was the victim of a serial child molester. A teacher, a woman, and no one believed me. This is an important detail as to why I did what I would later do. Several years ago, I saw her while I was shopping. First, I was afraid. Then I realized, I was not 10 anymore. I was a 25-year-old, adult male. I became angry. I stalked her for weeks, saw her working as a teacher, still, found her on social media, catfished my way into the cougar dating Facebook group she was in. Learned she had victimized more kids since she had lost me as her pet. She called her victims her teacher pets. After I was sure of everything, and had gathered my information, I plastered her neighborhood with her private Facebook group posts about how much she loves the feeling of power as she pins the little cubs to the desk in her office. The flyers had her face, her address, her phone number, and a bunch of other stuff. This isn't a dark secret, really, because if I get caught, so what? I outed a loud and proud cub hunter. As I can't reply to all individually, I'm going to put this here. Yes, I did report her and the Facebook group. The group no longer exists, and hasn't since I did this. I am now in my 30s, and this revenge was 7 years ago. She moved not long after I did this, but I can't say that my actions are the reason. I have not continued to follow her, as my mental health takes priority, and the actions I took back then, for my revenge, actually caused a bit of relapse on my depression. I reported her when I was 10, and again when I found her living in the same town when I was 25, the group chat logs, the Facebook posts, and all information was turned over to the local police via throwaway email. To my knowledge, nothing was ever done on the matter. I didn't kill her, or cause her physical harm, because I have a life, and while it isn't all that great, it's a lot better than prison. My grandmother has dementia, she's been dying for years now. The woman she was before is entirely gone. My grandfather is still convinced she is there, talks to her, tells us he thinks she's getting better. She's not, and he's deluding himself. She doesn't laugh anymore, or remember anyone's names, and can barely eat. In my eyes she is already dead. Still alive to everyone else. I wish this husk of her was gone so I could remember her as she actually was, and so that I wouldn't have to watch my grandfather or the rest of my family delude himself. Call me maybe as my morning alarm. This is crazy. Which story was your favorite? Let me know in the comments. Leave a like and subscribe.